Welcome back to Midnight Chimes In, where I'm going to be reacting to the Season 1 finale, The Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death, as well as giving my overall thoughts on the new series. Those of you who've been watching my channel for a while will know that my enthusiasm wasn't exactly high coming into this series. I have gone back and forth about whether I was perhaps too cynical in my video I put out where I talked about the stagnation of Doctor Who and how it has no future in its current guise. I do largely stand by everything I said, however I would now add that, if anything, the stagnation actually stretches back a lot further. Watching Verdana's video essay, Doctor Who is stuck in a time loop, really drew my attention to the fact that creative control of the show has essentially been in the hands of the same clique of writers for almost 2 decades now. Because, you know, Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, Mark Gatiss, even the likes of Chris Chibnall are all members of the Fitzroy Club. It's a subject that might even be worth its own video at some point, but in the meantime you should go watch Verdana's video before it gets taken off YouTube again, because the BBC are a garbage organisation. Now, having said all of that, there are a couple of aspects of Season 1 that have felt refreshing and have been a pleasant surprise. The first is that we've had no Daleks, no Cybermen, no reliance on recurring villains. It's all been new monsters and antagonists, with the one exception, of course, that we will be getting to. And secondly, there has been a fair amount of experimentation with unconventional storytelling. When you look at something like 73 Yards, that's definitely not your typical revived era Doctor Who episode. And then we had The Devil's Chord, which, while I don't rate it very highly myself, I do appreciate how unique it is in tone. I actually think it should have leaned harder into being camp and surreal, and perhaps even just being a full-on musical. While there were no standout 10 out of 10 episodes that really blew me away like Midnight, I would say the series peaked around the middle, with Boom, 73 Yards and Dot and Bubble, all of which are pretty engrossing stories that really showcase Ncuti Gatwa's acting talents as well. Particularly the first one, obviously not so much 73 Yards because he's barely in it. But all of those are episodes I might revisit with a more in-depth review at some point. In fact, at the time of recording this video, I've already started work on a script for 73 Yards. But I'm sure that what you're really waiting to hear is my opinion on the finale, and unfortunately this is where my cynical outlook about the state of the show has really just been reaffirmed. I had a fair bit of trepidation going into Empire of Death, mainly because Sutekh is one of the greatest classic Doctor Who villains, and Russell T Davies doesn't have a particularly great track record for his handling of godlike entities since he came back as showrunner. Funnily enough, I think the way Sutekh's return was handled is okay. He immediately wrecks the universe and turns everything to dust as soon as he's able to manifest himself, which is nothing less than I would expect. And the idea of dragging Sutekh through the time vortex, literally taking the bad dog for a walk in order to reverse all the damage like a double negative, does have a sort of logic to it, even if the explanation for it is very vague. What really doesn't work is the twist about Ruby's parents actually being ordinary humans, Last Jedi style. It's not that there's anything wrong with that idea in principle, it had the potential to be a nice subversion, it's just that the show hadn't been building up to that conclusion. What Davies essentially did is cheat and then pretend like he did something clever, like, "Oh, I got you there, didn't I? I bet you were thinking Ruby's mum would be someone really powerful and alien." Well, yes, because otherwise nothing you have spent the last 8 episodes setting up makes any sense. Like, what's the deal with it snowing all the time around Ruby? And as for Ruby's mum pointing at a sign in order to name her, Russell, that's not something that anyone does. What are you talking about? I've seen some people already suggesting that we might get a bit more explanation in future episodes, but then people were saying that about David Tennant returning or the Bi-Generation, and we never got any sort of logical in-universe explanation for either of those events. Likewise, Davros not being in a chair or the Doctor's clothing regenerating. Now, the last 2 of those are admittedly nitpicks, but they do form part of a wider recurring picture, which is that Davies thinks he's above the basic concept of cause and effect storytelling. And this is very much the impression I get from listening to him in interviews these days, that he basically just does whatever he wants and doesn't really care that much about plot mechanics or consistency. Which, honestly, as someone who ascribes to the more formalist camp of storytelling as opposed to realism, I can sort of get behind that attitude to a certain extent. But there does need to be some grounding in logic in order for there to be anything at stake. You can't just move the goalposts in the middle of a series finale and expect it to be satisfying. What is perhaps more concerning for the future of the show, though, is just how reliant Empire of Death is on Doctor Who's past, and how potentially alienating it is to new viewers for that reason. Given that a whole segment of the story literally takes place in the quote-unquote memory TARDIS and involves the Doctor, Ruby and Mel basically sitting down to watch a nearly 50-year-old story, which, as Mr. TARDIS pointed out, is not even legally available to watch for many of the international viewers Doctor Who is supposedly trying to appeal to, with it now streaming on Disney+. If the show really wants to regain popularity and become relevant again, this is definitely not the way to go about doing it. But that just about sums up the state of Doctor Who for me at the moment. It is stuck in the past, both on screen and creatively behind the scenes, and really seems to believe that its best days are behind it. And with that in mind, the fact we already know that Stephen Moffat is again writing the next episode just absolutely sucks away my enthusiasm for the show right now. This is Midnight Chimes, still waiting for the last train home.